Alright, hey guys, my name's Hap and this is the E75, a tier 9 German heavy tank, and I must admit it's absolutely great. This is easily one of my favorite tanks in the game simply due to how it performs, and baby oh baby, it's one hell of a performer. Let me show you why. The gun is decent but not outstanding by any means. 460 alpha is interesting for tier 9 heavy. After all, it doesn't really get bigger for tier 9 heavies. I can only remember the KPF having more alpha. 246 penetration is middle of the pack, it won't really save you, and the other pen values aren't that shiningly great either, but the HE's 65mm of penetration is welcome. What makes the gun shine isn't its base stats, however. I believe it's a combination of several key factors. One of them is the gun depression. At 8 degrees you won't be really getting anything better. The second is the armor profile working in your favor, and the third is the fact you really don't need the DPM. I forgot to mention that. The reload time isn't too good at around 11 seconds. That makes your DPM around 2200, and being honest, with a gun like this, I don't think that this drawback is much of an issue. Especially once I start talking about the armor, and oh boy, that's where this tank truly shines. If I had to recommend something to do with the gun, however, I'd say to not rush your shots. I know, really easy to say that, but I really mean it. The accuracy of the gun can truly troll you sometimes, so aiming them in is very worthwhile. The armor is where this tank goes from good to absolutely amazing. With the Tiger II's armor being also just about as good as this thing's, it shines somewhat less, but it is still easily the second best armor profile of any tier 9 heavy. What is the first one, you might ask? Well, it's the ST1, but I can't really say anything about it at the moment. Back to the E75. This is possibly the easiest armor profile to work with for a new player. Why? It's already well angled, and even without proper angling, this is a fearsome vehicle. I guarantee you that a lot of mediums will bounce right off of you, unless they know the weak spots, and so should you. After all, you may be on the receiving end of one of those guns. And looking at the front of the tank, the only obvious weak point is the cupola. And unless you got a good pen, or unless you are using premium ammo, the lower glazes is out of the question. The lower plate is actually an easier shot if you got a flat angle at the lower plate. What I mean by that is if the enemy E75 is angled upwards with its lower plate, making the shot more likely to penetrate, but other than that, good luck, you'll need it. There's always the chance of you going through the front of the turret with enough pen, but just wiggle and you mitigate the chances of that by a pretty big percentage. If you're playing the tank, however, I highly recommend hiding the lower plate, despite me saying it's very strong. Against tanks that aren't mediums, it loses a lot of its potential, so it's a good idea to do that. If you, however, do not have the luxury of hiding your plate, angle. Angling helps a lot in tanks like this, but you'll probably have to keep the turret on target since angling that way usually gives out more weak points on the turret sides. It's basically the same issue as the Tiger II. However, the E75 is more forgiving in this department as its sides aren't angled that badly, so you have a bit of leeway. Oh, also you're good at side scraping, so I would recommend doing that too. Just be careful if you're scraping towards the left of something, as you may get hit in the cupola. The mobility could actually be pretty poor if I were talking about any other tier 9 heavy with strong points such as this. But the surprising part is that the mobility on the E75 ain't bad. Yeah, you have terrible effective horsepower. Yeah, your turret traverse ain't that great either. But the fact you can even move 40 kph with this thing is downright impressive. This means you can actually relocate within a decent amount of time, something that other heavy tanks cannot really do that well in this tier. Other than that, the mobility isn't anything special, so let's just say it's surprising for how much the tank weighs, almost 92 tons. Doesn't make it that good for ramming though. Use the Object 263 or the E50M for that instead. So, for equipment, this is gonna be a rather straightforward one. gun rammer, since calibrated shells won't help you a whole lot. Then I use improved modules, although the argument for the defense system can be made. Then I use optics. After that, the gun lane drive, then the enhanced armor. With 2200 HP, using improved assembly doesn't make a whole lot of a difference. Sure, you get like an extra 100 HP, but I usually prefer my armor to be more reliable. Then the engine accelerator, though the argument for more traverse can also be made. Then the vertical stabilizer, toolbox, and consumable delivery system. You won't be firing long enough or fast enough for the high-end consumables to make a difference this time. Well then, the pros. Great armor, good gun, workable armor profile, and acceptable mobility. The cons, comparably poor traverse numbers, relatively long reload. Is the tank worth it then? Absolutely, it is worth it 100%. I can't really give a more glowing recommendation to this tank, it is absolutely worth your time. It is also an ideal tank for newer players that want to go to tier 9 heavy. If you're a very competent player, you will almost always put out great results, and even someone like me can get really good games in it. It is also pretty fun to play. Granted, it will probably get boring after a while, but for a few hundred games it is definitely a keeper. In case you want some alternatives, however, I also recommend the ST1. It has a less forgiving grind, and the stock grind itself is terrible if you haven't gone through the IS3, but that thing is also a bunker on tracks. And this may be a controversial one, but the WZ11114 is also a decent tier 9 heavy to take instead of the E75. So, with that out of the way, let me show you some replays. Thankfully, I have a pretty wide selection of them on the E75, so getting some good games wasn't very hard. So, Port Bay, I suppose. Well then, well, there's not really a whole lot I could actually say about the battles like this in general, so I am going to talk about the tank itself. How does it perform in a battle, what you should do with it, because for a lot of people the stuff that I talk about at the beginning of the video might not be enough. And what's really important to get is basically how to play a tank like this, because this is just the standard run-of-the-mill heavy tank, but with every single thing going for it, maybe except the gun accuracy. This, in my opinion, is easily one of the best tanks to practice your side-scraping skills on, but if you want something to practice hold down in, you're gonna have to pick a different tank, like the T-34 on my left, for example. That's actually a very good example of practicing hold down. Now, with side scraping as well, you might already notice that I am going towards the left here, and that's not only because this is basically the only place where you can side scrape effectively on this part of Port Bay, but it is also convenient for hiding your cupola. Now, I am not sure if I am attempting a shot on T-44, I don't think I am. So it could be worse, and there's some noise in the background, sorry about that, but here is a Lerva, and here is a 400 HP poor Lerva, I suppose. Now that was a nice heat shell bounce from the bullsig, I suppose. So yeah, that basically brings me to a lot of stuff. Yeah, sorry about that. Someone wanted to tell me something and I was in the middle of recording. As you can see, I'm clearly busy. Now, with the accuracy on the E75, you may get shots like this, and then you may just get shots that completely whiff. It is a relatively temperamental gun. You have to absolutely let it aim in, because it can give you shots like this for 500, and if you just rush your shots, you will get, well, 0. Or worst case scenario, you will just track someone. And that happens too. So yeah, everything is possible. But basically, there is really not much I can talk about here. But well, this shot is absolutely nasty. But the E75 is a tank that I would definitely recommend to someone who's either starting the game or just wants a very competent tier 9 tank, be it light, medium, heavy, or tank destroyer. If you're looking for a heavy, then this might be it too, because if you haven't done the IS-7 line in the Russian Tech 3, you might have issues with the ST1 that may sour the experience for you, which isn't ideal. And what's also important is the map awareness. You have noticed that I have turned around to get the bad chat, which thankfully stayed still so I could hate it. And this is just what I love about the E75. Just watch this. Aside the lever, like bam, that's down. Just look at this IS3. Poor guy has nothing against me. Just bam. And he's absolutely boned. There is nothing that you can do about this. Bam. Easy. Just absolute fun. And that is how I would basically describe the E75. Absolute fun, absolute effectiveness. There is not really anything that this tank gets wrong, because it has that alpha, it has that armor, and it still has decent mobility. I tried to put a HE shell in the roof here, but I decided to not risk it. So, 520, that's still a good roll. But hey, 3.8k, that's basically what we end on. So, not a bad result. And that's what you can get actually very frequently in the E75, which I believe gets us a second class. This was a rating battle, by the way, because I had to do missions at the time. So, it also doesn't earn a whole lot of money, but it's a tier 9. I'm sure you can understand that. So, next one is gonna be on Normandy. Alright, Normandy it is then. Now, this is a tier 10 match, something that even in this, that the E75 actually performs quite well in. You would be surprised just how well it can perform even when it's just down tiered. And when it's just, well, down tiered, up tiered, sorry. And it's actually still quite an effective tank against plenty of other vehicles. Now, this Sheridan was an absolutely interesting player, I have to admit, but hey, not much I can do about that. I couldn't even hit him if I wanted to. So, with positions like this, many people usually don't even have the idea to just aim at your cupola, and they immediately start looking at your lower plate, which is usually hidden by the time you poke out, shoot, and then hide again. Now, I have to give props to this E5, he actually carried the whole game, so that I'm kind of happy that he helped me play this out so well. I could have probably popped in an HE shell in the engine deck, but I didn't want to really risk that. And because, anyway, the guy's got him. But, if I should really, summarize the E75 in a few words, it's basically like this. A heavy tank which is basically a learning bench for anybody that just needs to really get good in a lot of heavy tanks, and the E75 provides that testing bench of sorts. It is very effective. It can also survive a lot of punishment, like this M103. This M103 is absolutely just delicious. Just look at this shot, nice. I'll take one of those any day. But really, the E75 is probably one of the best heavies for just learning how to heavy in general. It is just that good, and anybody can pick it up and anybody can be good in it. It all really just escalates from that point on, or basically due to how well you play. If you're a good player, then you can get some ridiculous results in the E75. If you're an average player, you'll still get pretty decent and respectable results, but hey, watch this. Oh, watch this. That was an incredible round, I have to admit. But hey, we are nearing the end of our life in our tank, because, well, the Sheridan is slowly sliding past us, and I basically have no good shots on him. But the E100 did, thankfully. So, I apologize that this is a little bit less structured review, but hey, I am kind of rushing it a little bit, so sorry about that. Mm, but if I just had to talk more about the tank, I wouldn't be getting anything else through. So that is basically it. So my name is Hap. If you like this video, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you all later, probably in the Thunder video, which is, it's gonna be an interesting one. Bye bye.